Good evening and welcome again to this November 27th, 2023 meeting of the LBVB Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole.
Here.
Trustee Fisher.
Here.
Trustee Freed.
Here.
Trustee Hatch.
Here.
Trustee Bratton.
Here.
Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda are the consideration of the minutes of the November 13, 2023 regular Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes? Thank you. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next would be our non-agenda items and visitors. The Village President and Board of Trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Village Board of Trustees on any matter not listed on this agenda. Each person addressing the Village Board of Trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. And I do not see anybody here who would like to make a comment. Do we have anybody online? Sorry.
We have two folks participating online. If you would like to be heard tonight during this item, please raise your hand and be recognized.
Moving forward. So next would be item 5, Village Board sets the order of the meeting. The Village President will entertain and Board of Trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the Village Board meeting.
You do 7A first, if you like.
It could be 7A. If there are no objections from the board. And so moving on to 7A. Drew?
So a couple of years ago, the village got in the business of doing mosquito control within our corporate boundaries after the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District was taken apart and decommissioned. And the village hired Clark Environmental to do that, and it's been a good relationship for the last 24 months, and weather has been highly cooperative. But I've invited George Ballas, who's the regional manager for Clark Environmental, to give the board an update on our services that are provided by Clark. So give me one moment and I will get your presentation. For what it's worth, Clark was the firm handling the or managing the mosquito control for the special district back when it was a regional single service provider. George?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I appreciate moving up on the agenda as well. I'm here to give just an overview of the mosquito abatement program here in the village, some of the things that have occurred over the last 24 months, and then address any questions that the board may have or any village residents as well. So the Village of Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement Program was run through Mosquito Abatement District was run since 1951 here. I've been overseeing the mosquito abatement program here in the village since 1995 as part of that, and then for the last 2 years through the village. The village program is really an integrated pest management approach, which follows the Centers for Disease Control guidelines for West Nile virus, as well as the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines for West Nile virus. The program as a whole is there to really control mosquitoes in various stages. And on the screen here, you can see the life stage of the mosquito. It covers 4 stages. If you think of it similar to a butterfly, there is the egg stages, there are the larval stages, which are both on the water and under the water, the larval stages, the pupa stage, which is kind of a cocoon stage, and then the adult stage. Female mosquitoes take blood meals so they can actually supply nutrients so they can relay those eggs. They mate with males. And mosquitoes, for all intents and purposes, for most years, are quality of life mosquitoes. They cause a nuisance, annoyance, and during various years, like this year, they actually form a public health risk as well. West Nile virus was introduced into the United States in 1999. I worked with the Centers for Disease Control in 1999 in New York City on that outbreak for West Nile virus. The West Nile virus moved to the Midwest here in 2001. Since then, the virus has been endemic to the area, meaning that it is permanently placed within the area. Generally will stay within the mosquito, which we talked about, the female mosquito that takes blood meals, and birds. That virus will stay in that cycle throughout the entire year, and year to year, whether it's in the bird population or the mosquito populations, it will remain in the area. During certain seasons, like this season, when we have warmer temperatures and drier conditions, a certain type of mosquito actually amplifies and is found more commonly in the area. It's known as the northern house mosquito. The northern house mosquito contributes to about 51% of the mosquitoes that we collected in the village this year. That type of mosquito likes to breed in stagnant water. So if you look at the eggs there, sometimes they're laid in floodplain areas. We have plenty of floodplain areas here, and we'll show a map of that. But also other areas where they like to lay their eggs are in storm drains or catch basins where stagnant water can be found. Next slide. One of the main components of the program are larval site inspections. So what will actually happen is our technicians, we have one here in the crowd who now is a police officer, who would actually go out and actually do inspections of standing water sites. There are over 170 sites covering over 200 acres within the village, which are potential breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Samples are taken on an ongoing basis, about every 7 to 10 days during the year, to actually inspect sites to find mosquito breeding. Next slide. During a year like this, we may see the site small like this. During a season like 2022, after the flood rains that you remember back in July where the downtown flooded, the sites vary in size. So mosquitoes can breed in very small sites like this. This is from this current year, 2023, after the rains in July, but they can expand up to very large areas. Different types of mosquitoes like to breed in different areas, as we talked about. The Culex mosquito, the type of mosquito that carries West Nile virus, will lay its eggs on the surface of the water. When the temperatures rise up and we don't get a lot of rain, that becomes very stagnant, and those mosquitoes are able to proliferate very quickly. Mosquito larvae are collected in these small cups and brought back to our lab. This is what a mosquito larva looks like in its larger form. Mosquito larvae are really there just feeding and producing and becoming pupa and then into adult stage. Generally, mosquitoes will come off in a 50-50 constitution of males to females. Next slide. So what we like to do also is to determine what types of mosquitoes are in the area. There were 38 different types of mosquitoes collected this year in the village. There are over 53 types of mosquitoes collected in Lake County. We talked about 2 different genuses, types that are standing water or stagnant water, and some of them are floodwater mosquitoes. The green trap on the left is what is called the New Jersey light trap. It collects density and distribution of mosquitoes in the area. It collects a large variety of mosquitoes. It's collected 3 times per week starting in May, going all the way through September. The trap on the right-hand side is called a gravid trap. Gravid meaning it collects female mosquitoes which have taken a blood meal already. That is where we test for West Nile virus. That goes all the way from the beginning of June all the way through September as well. Collections are made on an ongoing basis. Those collections that are made for the gravid trap are collected and actually tested for West Nile virus at our biosafety level 2 PCR laboratory in Roselle, Illinois. And the trap on the right, on the left-hand side, those are collected 3 times per week and identified 2 species. That allows us to determine what types of mosquitoes might be breeding in the area and what types of sites they may be as well. Next slide. So this is kind of a unique slide. So it might be a little bit hard to see, but you can see there's 2 concentric circles there, a red circle and a blue circle, and you can see one coming from the top. The red circle is 1/2 mile around the trap location for the gravid trap. That allows us to determine if there's a West Nile risk within the area. The blue circle is 1 mile around that trap. And you can see that one trap that we have right there allows us to determine risk factors for the village in a larger area. The blue circle up in the north, and then the red circle come from our grab trap that we have at the Great Lakes Naval Base, which we also perform work at. And you can see one down in the southern area, which comes from a trap that we collect for the Lake County Health Department. So with this trap, we're able to determine what type of risk is in the area. We did have positive samples of Culex mosquitoes this year, which we look at the types of mosquitoes that come in. We had positives in 3 of them in August and 1 in the early part of September. One of the unique things is it doesn't matter if there's just positives. This is something that Drew and I have discussed at length. Positives mean that there is presence of the virus, which is pretty common that we know that's endemic in the area. What we're also looking at is population density. And uniquely, in the traps that we have right here, there were only 8 mosquitoes collected out of those rabbit traps on average in the village. That's why there were no additional services that were requested or needed. If you look up to the north there were over 20 collected in those Great Lakes traps. And up in Waukegan, we were over 30 mosquitoes per rabbit trap collection. And so those orient to different services which may be needed based on the risk factor. So while we had positives and we put out some communication regarding things to do around wearing repellents, getting rid of standing water, there was no need for any additional services like adult mosquito control, which may be needed as a risk reduction factor. Next slide. So everything is brought in through our laboratory for identification. Next slide. And so there are a lot of things that happen. So when most people think of mosquito control, if you were here for a very long time, you might have thought of trucks rolling down the street spraying for mosquitoes. But most of the work that we actually do is part of the science-oriented part of this. So on the left-hand side and on the bottom, they're actually identifying the mosquitoes that are collected in that first green trap on the left. That allows us to determine, again, what types of mosquitoes are here, what might be a risk factor down the road. Up on the top portion are actually identifying larvae to actually determine what types of mosquitoes those are, whether they are Culex mosquitoes, potential disease carriers. And on the far right-hand side is actually the PCR testing, which is done for West Nile virus. This is all done in our laboratory in Roselle. The facility is kind of a crown jewel for us. This is a new facility that was built in 2017. This facility is a net positive building. It actually produces more energy than it actually uses. It includes our lab and our operational facility. It is part of our larger campus, which includes our helicopter pad, which is also there. But this facility allows us to make decisions based on science, and really the program here is based on science. So there are decisions made for when treatments should be made based on all of that data that we pull in. Next slide. Larval control is performed in various ways, but one of the largest areas where we have breeding sites within the village are actually the storm drain areas. There are approximately 1,500 storm drains. You can see a technician using a bicycle which rides around. It has a computer system that gives the GPS. They're able to mark down where they make treatments. But as you look into the catch basin, you can see the grate there in the center, and up on the top part is the actual water that stands in there. We talked a little bit about Culex mosquitoes liking to lay their eggs on stagnant water. When it gets high temperatures and water just sits on the bottom, there's a lot of breeding in there. We do treatments every month to treat those using bicycle riding technicians to go around and they drop those in, and the little water-soluble pouch which they're using is actually on the far left hand, which is a water permeable with a granular product that lasts for 30 days in there. Next. The product that we use come from the Natural formulations. Natural is an OMRI-listed or Organic Material Review Institute listed product. It also won the US EPA's Green Chemistry Challenge Award. It's a product which is very sensitive to the environment, but at the same time very effective against mosquitoes. It is truly an EPA approved product, so many times people will ask, well, is it a green product that doesn't work as well? We've gone through the full EPA registration on that to make sure that it works as effectively, if not better, than other products on the market. And this is the main product that we would use in that. We also have a biological control. We actually stock in 7 ponds. These are flathead minnows that are utilized in areas where breeding has been known. So we utilize some of the information that we had from the district previously, and we can utilize these fish because they're voracious eaters of mosquito larvae and other types of insects on the surface. Next slide. So there are some additional services that we have not used since we've started the program here. One of them is larval control by air. If you look back a couple slides and you saw those big concentric circles, there are a lot of sites on the far western end, kind of by the sanctuary and then along by the golf course where there's a lot of standing water. Ironically, during the last 2 years, we've had a very wet period that dried down very rapidly. We were very wet this July, but we were very, very dry in April and May. So there hasn't been standing water in those areas, and that would be something that is part of the contracted program, but would only be utilized based on the data that we would see. The next slide. If adult mosquito control would be needed, we would utilize also an organic material review institute listed product that can be used in and around organic farms and gardens. We have not had to utilize that. I talked a little bit about putting some of the data in there. The counts for mosquitoes this year did not even reach the threshold of where we'd actually make a recommendation to actually look further at the mosquito populations. The only time that we looked at mosquito populations during this last year was for disease situations that we saw coming up in August and into September. We did have one human case of West Nile virus in Lake County. It was in Waukegan with an onset date in the first week of September, but there were 115 cases in the state of Illinois, most of them in northeastern Illinois, and the cases vary in age, but generally around 50 and above is when we see most of those cases. There were 5 fatalities as well. And from those 115 cases, whenever you have cases, there's about 150 cases which are undiagnosed from each one of those cases. So a very small number, but we did have some communications. This is the 3 R's, which is just reduce number of things around your home, wear insect repellent when you're outside, especially when mosquitoes are active, and then report where standing water is. And this is something that we strive on this. We do have a portal which allows residents to notify us of any standing water, and then we will go out there at no charge and just go check that water. If it needs to be treated, it will be made at that time as well. So that portal is available at any time. And then you can see here another rider going out doing a treatment of catch basins. Are there any kind of questions that you may have?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
First of all, I'm so grateful that you're here. Really interesting information. And my concern has always been about balancing our ecosystem properly. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what impact, if any, the larval treatments, and I'm thrilled that we didn't need adult treatments, but we as a board have talked about asking that we don't do it unless it's absolutely recommended. So specifically bees is my concern, but generally other plant and animal life, whether it's domestic or wildlife. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of the treatment?
Sure. So from a larval control perspective, there is no effect on any of those insects like bees. The treatments are made directly to the water. So the application, like you can see right there with the catch basin, is dropped directly into the water. Whether we're doing an application, it might be a hand application, would be made to a smaller area. So from that perspective, what it would affect are other dipterans, which are of the fly family, similar to mosquitoes. So that's the effect that would have. So it wouldn't have on non-targets, so that actually is a targeted insect on the label. From an adult mosquito control perspective, is that application is made during the evening hours at an application rate which affects insects of a certain weight class. So you're looking at midge flies or mosquitoes that would be affected potentially because they'll be flying at night. Other insects, butterflies, other insects that are larger, we hear about fireflies, things of that sort. The application rate is really there to affect an insect of a certain weight class. So it's timing specific and dosage specific. And when looking at this across the board, the US EPA has stated, and the Centers for Disease Control, when necessary, adult mosquito control is an effective use pattern for the products. It will not have any effects on the environment, wildlife, or human life, as long as you're using it according to the labeled rates. So we take very strongly what the recommendations of this board were when we took this contract and looked at it and said, we are going to look at certain risk factors, and at that time is when we would make recommendations. So you can see even this year, looking at it, we had positive mosquito samples, but we didn't say, oh, we need to do it because we have these samples. We look at density and other factors which drive the science behind it. And I think that's the way that you can use effective insecticide use and be pro-environment at the exact same time.
I have a question actually.
Yes.
You mentioned TV's question. I think was where the affecting the bee population at night was our question at the time when we first heard that. The question I have for you is, I've read a lot in the last few years about a decreasing bird population. So we lost half of the birds in this country, for example, and more in Europe. How does that affect the bird population and the bat population that is basically also hunting at the same time you basically spray, right, around 7, 8 p.m. dusk time? Do you have figures for that?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, West Nile virus actually greatly affects bird populations. So West Nile virus can infect bird populations. Certain types of birds actually are very fatal, whether it's blue jays, crows. There's lots of birds that will actually die from West Nile virus. The population, when we're doing adult mosquito control, because of, again, the dosage that's actually going out, will not affect any wildlife that's out there. So there are no actually restrictions for application. So if we do an application during the evening, there isn't any wait time that's necessary. So different than certain agricultural applications where you have re-entry times or things of that sort. For adult mosquito control using Maris, there are no re-entry times. So people can be out during the application and they still find that within the safety and risk factors that are associated with that. So from a bird perspective, it's actually a little bit different. While we're knocking down a certain type of bird, mosquito or a small midge fly, there are other insects which are available for feeding. And it's interesting because bats in general have always been known to be mosquito feeders. The reality is that it was actually a misdiagnosed study from Purdue University where they put bats into a cage with lots of mosquitoes. They ate lots of mosquitoes and they said, wow, they ate 40,000 mosquitoes in a day. It's very similar to me saying, well, all we do is eat French fries. If you put me in a cage and gave me 1,000 McDonald's French fries, it'd say, a man can eat 1,000 French fries every single day. The reality is that's not what their diet is. And so most birds and most bats would like larger insects because they need the energy that's associated with that, the calories that come from those larger insects. So if you look at the largest bat population, for instance, in Lake County, it's actually one of the areas that's in Wakanda, which actually has some of the highest West Nile virus numbers, but they're there because there's a lot of agriculture that's still there that allows them to eat larger insects that are still found in that area.
Thank you.
One more quick question
Yes.
about reporting, which, how do you recommend, how can we spread the word? What are we doing to make sure our community knows who to report to and how to report?
So on the website, there's some direct lineage, some words that are there to allow you to understand what the program actually has on there. It does have the portal that's actually on there as well, and it actually has a direct email to me. So if someone has questions regarding things, we can actually answer. I've answered direct questions regarding safety, things of that sort, where we'll share that. But that portal is available all the time. It allows people to register to be notified prior to adult mosquito control. So we did transfer everyone who was on the list previously onto that list should we need adult mosquito control. It allows people to notify us of standing water. It allows them to register if they want to know what happened in the standing water, or you can just register it as anonymously and we can actually go out and check that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the report that was there is just a small sustainability report, just outlines some of the things that we're trying to do, similar to your community on the sustainability side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
That concludes my report.
Nice job.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 6, our village finance report. First with our warrants report for November 14 to November 27, 2023, and September 2023 payroll expenditures. Is there a motion to approve this report?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. So as a summary of background and reason for request, we have expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $795,200.34 for November 14 to November 27, 2023, and expenditure of village funds for payment of payroll in the amount of $281,109.30 for October 2023, for a total expenditures of $1,076,309.64. Do we have questions on the board and questions on this ledger? And I do not see questions. This is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next would be our October 2023 financial report. Mrs. O'Connell, could you please give us highlights?
Sure. The monthly sales tax revenue on a cash basis for September fiscal year '24 is $361,861, which is $61,043, or 20.3% greater than the fiscal '23 cash receipts for the same period. General fund fiscal '24 total revenues of $8,119,136 are $460,250 less than the fiscal '23 year-to-date revenues. Of note, the fiscal year '23 general fund revenues included $378,451 in ARPA funds money for the same period. Fiscal year '24 current expenditures are consistent with or less than budgeted. For the total general fund, the fiscal year-to-date expenditures of $5,194,000 are $412,417 less than the expenditures for the same period in fiscal year '23.
Thank you very much. And I skipped over asking for a motion to accept the finance report. Could I please ask for a motion?
You can have that motion for me.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Are there any questions to Bettina?
Bettina, other than the ARPA funds, anything we can point to?
Sure, there were also much more building permit revenues for that period of time, and there was fluctuations in that. We were over 400,000 in that alone at the time, and now we're in the 200,000. So the net of all that together contributes to the change.
We had to have the building permits in connection to ARPA.
Thank you. Any more questions from the board? Mary? If there are no more questions, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next would be item 8, our village attorney's report, and it could not be Mr. Peter Kirkman today, but Mrs. Courtney Willis. Mrs. Willis, do we have a report?
No report.
Thank you. I do not have, item 9 will be a village president's report. I do not have a report, a formal report, except we will have a tri-board meeting tomorrow between village board, school board, and park district boards. That will be our regular once a month on Friday meeting, but it will happen tomorrow. And besides that, I have nothing else. Next item is item 11, a public hearing.
10.
Item 10. Item 10 is acceptance of our correspondence. Please note that all correspondence was delivered. Actually, should I ask a motion first?
It's your pleasure.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Please note that all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on November 10 and 17, 2023. Are there any questions on the correspondence?
No.
This is a voice vote, correct? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you so much. Next item is really at this time. A public hearing regarding year 2023 property tax levy. The Village of Lake Bluff, in keeping with past practice, will conduct a public hearing on the proposed year 2023 property tax levy. As part of his hearing, Finance Director O'Connell will present information on the Finance Committee's tax levy recommendation. The hearing notice was published in the Tribune on November 16, 2023. and on the village website on November 22, 2023. We will have two subsequent agenda items for our proposed tax levy information and ordinance. And as such, I declare a public hearing open for our year 2023 property tax levy. Mrs. O'Connor.
So good evening, and thank you for allowing me the time to present some information on the 2023 tax levy. This levy presentation is for the property tax bills that will be sent to property owners in May of 2024. Just briefly, when Illinois became a state in 1818, the Constitution contained a provision for taxing property in direct proportion to the value of the property. From 1818 to 1930, amendments to the Constitution provided the state with various powers and authorities concerning property tax. The Revenue Act of 1872 gave Illinois final authority for settling valuations, and the last year the state levied real estate tax was in 1930. Since then, property taxes have been levied at the local level. So some topics that we'll review tonight are sources of revenue, the assessment cycle, how tax dollars are used, historical information on the valuations and their amounts, and impact on the median family home. So the village has several financial policies which guide the preparation of the tax levy and the budget. And some of these more significant practices are to balance revenue sources between taxes, user fees, and other sources to reduce the reliance on any one source, to be prudent in the expenditure of funds, and to maintain adequate operational reserves, to fund the pension requirements as determined by the actuaries, and to use non-reoccurring revenue sources to finance operational expenditures. Sales tax and property tax continue to be the two largest sources of revenue. So to look at the tax assessment cycle itself, the timing and determination of the tax levy creates a challenge because it occurs between the preparation of fiscal year annual budget and the period when the funds are actually used. So the property tax rate is determined by Lake County. It appears on the property owner's tax bill, and that tax rate is applied to the assessed valuation. This determines the amount of money that the taxpayer pays to the village and other taxing districts. For the levy process on our end, we're a home rule community, and the village is not subject to the Property Tax Limitation Act, or PTEL. However, a resolution was passed in 2005, committing the village to abide by the PTEL limit. This means that any increase greater than 5% or CPI, whichever is less, from the prior year request will require a public hearing for approval. Annually, the Lake County Chief Assessor determines the level assessment in each township based on 3 prior years' sales transactions. The goal is to equalize or bring the 3-year average of median assessment levels to 33.3% of market value. The municipal side, the levy cycle includes budget prep, budget notice and hearings, budget ordinance approvals, publishing of the tax levy request, tax levy certification to the county in December, and then while on the township side, the county tax extension is used to levy and determine the amount to be extended against all properties located within the boundaries. So the clerk's tax extension unit determines the rate needed per $100 of tax value to generate the request for revenue based on the EAV within the district boundaries. So where do property taxes go? The village portion of the tax bill is about 9%, has remained that for a number of years. And while the remaining taxing bodies range from as high as a little over 40% to as low as 0, which isn't on the chart, but that would be CLC JAWA. The percentage is representative of the 2022 levy, and they don't reflect the recent referendum increases that would be part of future levy requests. So this chart shows the historically assessed value by class, along with the tax extension over the same period, while comparing correlation to EAV. The EAV equalized assessed value saw its largest increases around 2015 at about 8%, and the EAV has continued to increase intermittently. However, 2020 and 21 saw slight decreases, while this year's estimate from the county is anticipated to increase 6.53%. What changes the EAV? Market value. capacity for current properties and new construction or annexation added to the tax rolls. The village has had no annexation of property since 1998, when the sanctuary subdivision became part of the boundaries. So what does this current levy look like? The total levy is $5,043,168 compared to prior year of $4,803,018. The consumer price index was 6.5%, but we're limited to the 5% calculation as we abide by PTEL. The estimated new construction from the county was about 1.6 million, and the total EAV estimated increased, like I said, by 6.53%. The Lake Bluff Library Board calculated the property tax levy of $1,138,581 for the year, and last year's request was $1,084,000. So levies are making dollar amounts. To raise the amounts requested in the levies, the county clerks, can you go back one?
Sorry.
That's okay. County clerks calculate the tax rate for each fund levy, and the tax rate is calculated by taking the requested amount divided by EAV to get the tax rate, and those are the estimated tax rate based on the current levy that's included in the packet. So this chart shows the levy by purpose. It's important, however, to note that the levy doesn't fully fund these functions. The village relies on multiple sources of revenue, such as sales tax and other taxes, building permits, user fees, licenses, and fines to cover the costs of providing these services. Pensions, which include police, IMRF, Social Security, make up about 31% of this levy. And what's the impact on the median family home, which is about $662,500? You can see that the increase in just the village portion of that property tax bill will be about $92.60 based on the current levy request. And how do we rank compared to our other local communities? This data, however, is based on last year's 22 property tax amounts because we're in arrears and all these levies aren't public yet. So we rank about second compared to the other communities as far as on the lower end of the tax rate. So what this means is if a home for $662,500 were in Grace Lake, the property tax for that amount would be $26,000.
Say that again.
It means that the median family market home in Lake Bluff, $662,500. In Grace Lake, that property would be taxed at $26,475, whereas in Lake Bluff, it's $15,600.
So the constant there is the value of the home?
Right.
No, okay.
And the EAV, well, the constant's the medical home.
Yes, okay. So
They're total tax rate
throughout, so, yes.
You can see there.
I see that. Mhm.
And that concludes my summary of the tax allocation.
Thank you, Bettina. Are there questions on the board to Bettina on this presentation?
I'm not sure if it's under this agenda item or the next one, but there was one page on that presentation that I would be interested in talking a little bit more about.
Okay.
Which line?
Because this is the truth in taxation public hearing. So keep going. It's the one you had to go back to before when Bettina asked you to go back. That one, yeah. The extension total tax levy, right, is 5 million, if I could read, 5,045,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that number is calculated as 5% more than that tax levy was last year? Is that how we arrive at 5 million? Or are we saying that we add these numbers up and it just magically gets to 5,045,000?
No, $5,043,168 is the calculation to derive the numbers that we will levy, and those are the allocations of that levy amount.
So
Based on the EAV.
so we know what the levy will be and we're allocating it to the
Exactly.
various amounts.
Right.
So one thing that I don't know for sure that we've resolved finally, we certainly haven't gotten all of the information that I'm interested in seeing, is the police pension extension. And even if we were to contribute more than what's there, which I appreciate, I'm only one person making this, but even if we were to decide, okay, rather than 1.2 million, we're gonna contribute 1.4 because we're out of line with the other communities and 50% funded is not where we wanna be, et cetera. That $5 million number wouldn't change, right? We would move money around from some of the other line items.
I would actually say that as a board, you could make that decision to contribute to the fund outside of the levy, that you wouldn't change necessarily the levy numbers because a lot of these dollars actually filter into the budget and they're part of what we've committed to certain expenditures. So you look at perhaps the fund balance and say, you know, I want to make an allocation for this many years out and do this extra contribution.
I see, so refund balance wouldn't impact any of the rest of it. I understand, thank you.
This is a great question, thank you very much. Susan? I'm a little bit confused about what is the difference between police support services and police protection.
Sure. Police protection is related to the police officers and their expenditures related to that. Protection is actually the admin side of it, so the records clerks, the crossing guards, the actual clerical aspect of it. And we only levy a small amount for that division. That's not certainly representative of the budget for that
I
department.
saw it, thank you.
So that line item is funded by other than
General fund revenues, yes. The amount typically that we've always only levied in that line is the crossing guard amount. It's more just public service and legal in the field, so to speak.
Thank you, Bettina. Any
Sure.
more questions on the board about this item? Do we have any public comment to us online? I do not see anybody in this room.
If there are any questions from persons participating, attending the meeting through the Zoom meeting, please raise your hand, you can be recognized. There are none.
Thank you very much. And if there are no more comments, I will now declare this public hearing closed. And this public hearing is closed. Thank you. Next would be item 12, an ordinance levying property taxes for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30, 2024 for the village of Lake Bluff, Lake County, Illinois. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Pursuant to state law, on or before the last Tuesday in December, the village must file with the county clerk an ordinance requesting a property tax to be levied on all taxable property within the village. After review of levy estimates and financial projections at their October 9th meeting, the Finance Committee unanimously recommended the approval of an aggregate property tax levy of $5,043,168. The village share of the property tax levy is $3,904,587. It is anticipated that the Lake Bluff Public Library Board will request a property tax levy of $1,138,581 for the year 2023. The total levy amount of $5,043,168 is in compliance with the Property Tax Limitation Act and the Truth in Taxation Act. Special notice was not triggered by this levy. Are there any comments on the board on this item? Do we have anybody online who need to make a comment as well?
It doesn't appear anybody's raising their hand.
Okay. Thank you. And so it would be a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
So second reading will be on the December meeting for this ordinance and the other related levy ordinances.
Okay, thank you. Next item, the second item to be discussed here is item 13, an ordinance abating year 2023 property taxes levied for general obligation debt series 2019 and 2019A bonds of the village of Lake Bluff, Lake County, Illinois. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The village currently has refunding bonds series 2019 and 2019A general obligation bonds outstanding. Pursuant to ordinances 2019-18 and 2019-26, the county clerk is required to extend the property tax levy in the amount sufficient to pay the interest and principal on the bonds. Fortunately, the Waterworks Fund has adequate funds to transfer to the Water Funds bond and interest account for principal and interest payments on the 2019 general obligation bonds and the 2019A refunding bonds, which allows the village to abate the annual property tax levy. Because the bond ordinances directing extension of the annual property tax levy were filed with the county clerk, an ordinance is required to abate, not levy, the property tax for these bonds. Do we have any questions to debate now, please?
So as I understand it, we are permitted by law to, without regard to PTEL, levy taxes specifically to repay bonds, and we don't need to do that. And therefore, we're saying,
Don't levy for it.
don't levy for it.
Yeah,
Thanks very much, because we'll cover it elsewhere.
you got it.
That's my summary.
It probably explains why there was motion and second rather quickly on this one rather than this first.
$312 that we could take,
Right.
in addition to the $543 that we were just talking about, 5.043, which we are not going to levy. So that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Well, it would go into the total of the levy, the extension, requested extension,
Would be in
Yes.
addition.
or in lieu of some other,
It would be part of that
Yeah.
5 million number and we would reduce
would
the
offset some
allocation
other,
of the other
yeah.
Ah, I see, so it would be in addition, okay.
Right.
But to complicate it further, the village's home rule could back.
Yes, right, we could,
Right, because
understand, yeah.
Everyone is okay on the board? Okay. It is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bettina. Next would be item 14, a resolution approving a collective bargaining agreement with a fraternal order of police for the patrol officers. Is there a motion to approve
So
this
moved.
resolution?
Second.
Thank you. The collective bargaining agreement, CBA, with the village police patrol officers expired April 30, 2022. Over the past several months, the village bargaining team, the chief of police, the deputy chief of police, the finance director, and the village administrator, with guidance from village labor attorney Jill O'Brien, negotiated a new collective bargaining agreement with the Lake Bluff police patrol officers. Most of that time was spent working through a variety of details related to switching from the current 8-hour schedule to a 12-hour schedule, which will result in the addition of 1 sergeant and reduction in patrol officers by 1. Other negotiation goals with the patrol unit that were achieved include: number 1, securing the ability to use part-time patrol officers. Number 2, gaining greater notice of voluntary separation of employment, specifically a revocable payment for 60-day notice. Number 3, maintaining our position in the market with respect to wages. And number 4, increasing our flexibility to place lateral hires in the pay plan. As a note, just 6 years ago, the village hired its first lateral officers, and today 9 out of 10 officers are lateral hires. Therefore, this work. The team is recommending a 4-year agreement with wage increases each year for 3%, 3%, 3%, 2.55%, and retroactive pay to 5/1/2022. The proposed agreement also incorporates updated language to reflect recent case law, a $100 increase in the annual detective clothing stipend, and allowing compensatory time for the first time for patrol officers. On November 14, 2023, Officer Alex Van der Linden notified the village that the proposed CBA had been ratified by a majority of the members. Labor Attorney Jill O'Brien and village staff were present to respond to questions from the village board.
Two footnotes to add for the board. The first is there was a minor change to Appendix F, and that's true both for this agreement and the sergeants that reflects. There was essentially a redundant sentence in there talking about, in the very back, dealing with when the shifts took place for the split in time. It was, for whatever reason, it was not caught until the very end. It was just the same statement twice, and then the statement that was left and not completely recommended for redaction early this evening was, it was a number 4. Usually, sometimes in legal documents you write the word 4, then you put in parents 4. We forgot to put 4 in there. So, minor little typos to make that perfectly clear. And the second one is that,
Wondering where you're going to catch that.
yes, thank you. Thank you. The other point is Jill O'Brien was on the phone call earlier today. She had to step off, and time is going further. So if there are questions, I can ring her, and she would be happy to answer if they're not. I'll do my best otherwise.
I seem to see no questions on the board. It was a long process, so thank you very much. And thank you, Chief, on that.
And Bettina and Eric, who's not.
And Bettina. Sorry.
Yeah.
Jill has provided lots of good information for
Yes.
us throughout the whole process, so I think I don't feel any guilt for letting us move on.
This is
without
not sneaking up on anybody.
Right.
It's been going on for months, so.
So being a fly on the wall during this process, I know how much work went into making this happen and how much there was in terms of should we try the 12-hour, the 10-hour schedule, the 12-hour schedule, what does it take, and how much hair pulling or reading there was to actually make this happen. So I do appreciate what you guys achieved. The 3 of you in this room, and including Eric and other people, to try to test to make this happen for our village. So I'm grateful to you guys for the extra work you have put just to make this happen. So thank you.
We hope it works as well as we think it will.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Freed,
Aye.
Trustee Hatch,
Aye.
Trustee Rappin,
Aye.
Trustee Ryder,
Aye.
Trustee Cole,
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is item 15, a resolution approving a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police for the sergeants. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. While the collective bargaining agreement with the village police sergeants will not expire until April 30, 2024, the village bargaining team, so Chief of Police, Deputy Chief of Police, Finance Director, and village administrators with guidance from village labor attorney Jill O'Brien again, started conversation with sergeants early as their cooperation was needed to facilitate the department's move from the current 8 hours to a 12-hour schedule. Other village goals achieved through these negotiations sessions include reasonably reduced the compensation already experienced between the highest paid patrol officer and the lowest paid sergeant. Number 2, secured the ability to use part-time patrol officers. Number 3, maintain a market position with respect to wages. Number 4, increased notice of any voluntary separation. And number 5, ensured that sergeant compensations is distinctive enough from the patrol compensation to attract our best internal candidates. The team is recommending a 4-year agreement with wage increases every year, with a retroactive pay to May 1st, 2023. The proposed agreement also incorporates updated language to reflect recent case law, a new longevity stipend for 20-plus years of service, and memorializing the long-standing practice of allowing compensatory time for the first time. On November 22nd, 2023, Sergeant Tom Vinson notified the village that the proposed CBA had been ratified by a majority of members. Again, Labor Attorney Joe Brand and the village staff are present to respond to questions from the village board. Questions on the board? It is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our trustees report. Daily trustee wish to make a report? Discipline.
No.
Thank you. And this is followed by the consideration of the November 13, 2023 executive session minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes to those minutes? Thank you. This is a roll call. Clerk?
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Freed.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Thank you. I understand that we do not have an executive session tonight, and so that will bring us to our adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight?
So moved. Second.
Very fast. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?